Hello and welcome to the Gersnet Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast made for fans, by fans, and where the content is absolutely free. I am your host for this evening, David Wren, and we are coming live tonight, as always. But if you're a fan and you maybe want to listen back through the week, we are on all the usual podcast platforms, Acast, iTunes, Castbox, Stitcher and Spotify. So you can get the podcast there. You can also subscribe to what we're doing here and give us a like on social media pages. We are reporting on a win, another win tonight, and joining me to dissect that and the other comings and goings this week are Ross and Iain, who will help me go through last night's victory against Hamilton. We'll also touch on any sort of transfer rumours of the week and a couple of other things that have gone on. So first of all, Ross, how are you? How did you enjoy your weekend?
Well, that's a bank holiday, so I'm only 50% through the weekend. So bank holiday weekend, 3 points, top of the league. I'm in a very good mood.
Well, that's actually the most positive I've ever heard you.
I think it's that the luck of this sort of podcast scheduling is that I'm always on after a really crap result. So I'm feeling really good this week. I'm ready to talk about how good we are. No one's ever going to catch us. For the next 2 weeks at least, we're several points clear at the top of the league. It's a good day.
Iain, you're joining us again. How are you? Excited to be back on, especially with two of the real stars of the show as well.
Hello.
Oh.
So I didn't quite catch that there. Yeah, great to be back on. Good to see another win. I've been on holiday all week and I'm off tomorrow, so it's a good weekend basically.
I think that silence after I said two of the stars of the show referring to Ross and I, that was actually quite fitting.
I just had a glitch there, just as you said it, and I just didn't quite catch. I must have. I thought I'd misheard what you'd said. So
yeah, well, we'll go straight on to last night's game because I feel like even though it was a comfortable victory, there's still quite a lot to unpack from the game. It was fast and furious start. 2 early goals, 2-0 at half time, but really didn't kick on so much in terms of goals, Ross. But certainly a good performance.
Yeah, it was a good performance, and we've struggled on artificial pitches in recent years. So to go 2 goals up after 20 minutes, possession stats were off the chart. It was very, very comfortable, and I think there was maybe a certain degree of the players thinking, right, well, this is already wrapped up. They're not going to cause us any problems. We've got an international break coming up. We're top of the league, and they maybe just eased off a wee bit and looked after themselves and didn't take any risks. But I think most of the players actually acquitted themselves really, really well. I'm sure we'll come on to some individual performances in a moment, but the team's settling really, really nicely. And again, I'm sure we'll talk about the record of the clean sheets and everything, but it's an incredibly strong start to the season, and it was just a very composed, very self-assured performance yesterday. And I was saying off air there that there's been a wee bit of negativity following the game, that we weren't more clinical and we never put them to bed. But look, we're scoring goals, we're keeping clean sheets, and we're racking up points. I can't really ask for anything more.
Iain, in terms of the team selection there, Hadji came back in, made a mark certainly with a goal. But what did you make? I suppose what did you make of his performance to begin with in terms of the individuals? Because I think he's come in for a bit of criticism so far this season. Did you think that he was back on form, or do you think there's still a wee bit to go?
I think there's more to see from him, but I know he's been getting a bit of stick, and he's maybe not been the massive instant impact player that people maybe were hoping for. But this type of player that he is, I think he's one of these guys that could, do not an awful lot for 85 minutes, but a couple of bits of magic will sort of pull a victory out of the bag. So, he's got a goal, and that's going to help his confidence. And I think, I think he's doing okay. I mean, I think, there will be times, if we've got the squad, there will be times when he can be rested or left out, and someone else can come in and do a job in his place. And if he goes off the boil, then that's a fair enough approach to take. But I think we need to be patient with guys like that. It'll take a wee bit of time to settle in. I know he was here the second half of last season, but that was kind of shortened somewhat. He's still getting used to the pace of the Scottish game, or the not so much the pace, but the frenetic nature of the Scottish game. I think, and some of the tackles that he still gets are probably still going to be a bit of a shock to his system. So he'll have to adapt his game to that. But I think he's progressing okay.
Ross, in terms of, I mean, you and I were on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and we drew with Livingston, obviously, in that artificial pitch. Looked like we struggled. We struggled that day, to come to get to grips with the surface. But I mean, there was no real issues there. I think, to be fair to Hamilton, I think their pitch is a bit better than the one at Livingston. But certainly, I mean, it didn't. We used it to our advantage yesterday, I thought.
Yeah, and on that show a couple of weeks ago, we all kind of agreed that we have one of these artificial pitches at Auchenhowie, and there's no real excuse. So we seem to do well when we go to Hamilton, which is, it's a real relief, because you compare it to Rugby Park and to Tony Macaroni, and maybe it is a better quality of pitch, but it's also probably a lower quality of opposition. So it's pleasing to see a good result. I think that the result has something to do with the way that Brian Rice sets his team up as well. I think he's always a little bit more ambitious than Gary Holt or Alec Dyer over at Kilmarnock. So look, we struggle on plastic pitches at Livingston and Kilmarnock, but we've always done quite well when we go to Hamilton. And I don't think really if we'd struggled yesterday and picked up a poor result, I certainly don't think we'd be looking to the pitch for any excuses.
Just to stay on that point, obviously it's these sorts of games were the ones last season. Ross, I'll stay with you on this one, where we came unstuck. Not so much Hamilton, but I mean these tough sort of away games, small stadiums, and we seem to have sort of got over that a wee bit in terms of, yesterday we just came out the traps really quickly, and I think that's maybe something we didn't see often in some games last season, but still maybe lacking that real killer edge to really score more goals and kill the game off completely.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely a hallmark of our season last year, was an inability to put smaller teams to bed and maybe struggle to get fired up for the game. And last season, one of the main themes of the podcast was talking about the mentality of the squad, and then obviously that was kind of reflected in Tavernier's own programme notes 3/4 of the way through the season when he admitted that the squad was struggling mentally to cope with the pressure. This season, yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with momentum, and winning breeds confidence, and I think the whole team takes a lot of confidence from the number of clean sheets and the inability to concede goals. I think has made the team incredibly confident, and momentum cannot be understated in football, and in Scottish football in particular. And actually, I think that's why it's a great shame that we now go into an international break. And it's great that so many of the squad have been selected for their countries and are going away and representing the team within the international setups. But the momentum that we've generated in these past 6 games is phenomenal. And I don't tend to watch Celtic games, and I didn't watch them today, but I did watch them against Ferencváros, and I've seen 1 or 2 of their games this season when they've been on the telly, and they don't look like a great team, and they look like they're struggling for confidence. So you look at the kind of almost the mental difference between our squad and their squad at the moment, and it's fickle and it can change, but we seem to be in a very, very strong place mentally, which we have not been able to say probably up until this point under Steven Gerrard, and the momentum's been a real factor in that. So it's almost a disappointment that we're heading into the international break now.
Iain, when you look at, I mean, as Ross mentioned there, the mentality of the team seems to be a lot better this season. What do you think? What sort of part are the experienced players playing in that? You know, we've got a lot of guys in the team now that have been part of successful Rangers squads in the past. How important has it been, you know, for them to maybe get across to the newer lads that what it takes? Because obviously last season and it was cut short as you mentioned earlier. But obviously the stakes are so high this season for us. You know, do you think that the experienced players in the squad have had a part to play? Sorry, and getting that mentality right.
Well, I'm sure they have. You know, guys like Stephen Davis and Alan McGregor, and I suppose even Ryan Jack are important to that. But it's, to me, if there is an improvement in the mentality of the squad, it's possibly just coming from the young guys themselves who are learning on the job. Basically, you know, maybe last season they didn't realise what it meant, or what the significance of it was. I'm sure they quickly did when things started to go wrong after Christmas, and maybe hopefully if they're the right type of player, the right type of mentality, they will have learned from that and take it into this season. I mean, it's probably a bit early to judge because things only really started to go wrong quite far into last season. So I think at this stage, last season or last year, we were probably sitting thinking similar thoughts and hoping that things had moved on from the year before. So I'm not going to be negative about it, but I also don't want to count our chickens too early. So I still think there's bigger tests to come than what we've had so far. But so far so good. Let's hope the guys that lost it a wee bit last year have learned from that, and not just the players but the backroom staff as well. I mean, Stephen Gerrard's still learning as a manager how to manage his squad and his players. So hopefully he's learned from that and come up with new approaches and new ideas.
Ross, you mentioned earlier, but this sort of, I suppose, falls into the mentality theme as well. But an incredible start defensively for the team. 6 clean sheets on the spin. There's been a mix of centre half partnerships. Goldson's been the only one that's played every game, but it's been a pretty incredible run, and to get to this stage of the season and still not conceded a goal. And really, when you look back, there's not been a major amount of chances for teams either. It's not been a case of a fantastic goalkeeping performance keeping teams at bay. It's been a pretty special run of games for us.
It really has, and thinking back to the game yesterday against Hamilton, obviously McLaughlin made one very, very nice save from a set piece where he kind of claws it away just off the line. But other than that, he didn't have a lot to do, and I think obviously we can talk about the keeper and we can talk about the back four, and I'm sure we'll come on to kind of the centre half partnerships, which is a really, really interesting question. But also, I think a lot of praise has to go to yesterday. Obviously, it was Ryan Jack and Stephen Davis, and Glenn Kamara's been in there, towards the start of the season as well. They've done an excellent job of screening the back four and allowing the full backs to run on, and I think they play that role incredibly well. They're very, very disciplined. They're very solid and resolute. And I think, I spoke earlier about confidence. I think if you are a centre half or a full back and you've got those two guys playing in front of you, it gives you the confidence to play with a bit of freedom. And I think that confidence is why we're not seeing so many defensive howlers. We know that Tav has a howler in him. We know that Goldson has a howler in him, and we're not really seeing that so far this season. I think it's because they're playing with confidence. Now the back four will have a lot of rotation, I think, throughout the season, particularly in the centre half position, and we have four very, very good, very capable, five very capable centre halves. Obviously, with Katic out injured at the moment, and I expect that we'll see some rotation in that position. But in this day and age, you cannot overstate how impressive it is to get 6 clean sheets on the trot. I mean, look at England last season, had one of the most impressive campaigns from a championship winning side in Liverpool. And they never got close to having 6 clean sheets on the bounce. So it's a really incredible achievement to get here. And we've played obviously a number of teams that put a number of goals past us last season. Kilmarnock, Livingston, Hamilton themselves, and obviously Aberdeen. They all found the net against us with some regularity last season. So I think it's fair to say there must have been a significant amount of work put in there on the coaching by the coaching staff and on the training pitch. And I'm delighted to see that pay off, because I haven't, as a fan, I've not been able to have confidence in the Rangers' defence. I mean, thinking back to Warburton and Davy Weir and the lack of confidence that we had, but that lack of confidence has kind of been permanent throughout the last 4 or 5 years. So to get to the stage that we are today it's a real achievement by everyone playing in the squad, but also to Gerrard and his team.
Yeah, as Ross mentioned there, Iain, obviously Balogun started the season with Goldson. He got injured and he's back on the bench yesterday, but Hollander and Goldson are literally impressive as well. Ross suggested there that there could be a bit of rotation perhaps as the season goes on. But who for you, who would be your starters in the most important games? Who's impressed you?
I think probably I would be going for Goldson and Helander, because I think although Balogun has looked very impressive, I think we need to look for consistency longer term, and he's possibly only been brought in as not a stopgap as such, but for the shorter term. So I think these are the two guys that we'd be looking to the future. But I think we're lucky at the moment, because looking at the list, the 5 that we've got: Goldson, Balogun, Helander, Edmondson, and Katic. To be quite honest, I would be quite happy with any combination of, probably pretty much any combination of any of them, really, to be honest. I thought Edmondson was unlucky to lose his place when he did, because he's had the last, or towards the end of last season, I thought he looked good in Braga particularly. He had a really good game over there. Katic obviously unlucky with his injury, but again has a lot of potential there. And the current incumbents are strong, and I think Goldson's always going to be the guy who will be the first pick, because not just so much in his defensive abilities, but he's, I think, seen by Steven Gerrard as being one of his leaders and one of his organisers on the pitch. So I think he'll always get the shout if he's fit and available. And then it's really just going to be a case of pick one from 4. But but I think we're in a good position in the centre half. In terms of the defence, and that helps, because in the last couple of seasons there's always been that sort of feeling that we were under, any time that the opposition started pelting balls into the box, we were under serious pressure, and you always felt that there was a danger that the ball was going to end up breaking to someone and ending up in the net. I haven't seen that at all this season. You could argue that maybe the opposition hasn't been great, but I felt a lot more confident watching in the odd occasions that the other team has ventured into our penalty area. I've felt a lot more confident this season than I have done in the past. So things seem to have improved, and as Ross said, I think they must have been working on it in the close season and trying to put some things right. And that, it's a lot of it's to do with organisation and just concentration, I think, more than anything.
I think if we looked at a position, anywhere on the pitch that probably didn't need strengthened in the summer, I think it would have been fair to say it would have been in goal. Ross, in terms of Alan McGregor, he's been fantastic since he came back, but obviously injured at the start of the season. John McLaughlin came in and hasn't put a foot wrong. Frankie had mentioned it on Twitter today. I saw about his distribution, which has been fantastic too. What do you think the future holds for that position? Do you see McGregor getting back in, or do you think McLaughlin's now going to be the number one?
Well, I mean, hopefully the future holds a bit of a scrap, and I think we have two excellent goalkeepers there who can push each other to be the best that they can be, and that benefits the club. I think McGregor has probably not felt real competition for his place ever since he came back. Wes Foderingham is a very capable goalkeeper, but we all agreed that he wasn't Rangers number one material, certainly when McGregor came back. So I'm glad to see him have some competition, and McLaughlin's done incredibly well since he came back in. We said earlier he's not had a huge amount to do. He made a very, very smart save today from that corner. Yesterday from that corner. But other than that, he's not had a lot on his plate to deal with. I just hope that it breeds some healthy competition between the two of them, because I suspect that McLaughlin was sold the move by saying, look, you're going to start off as number two, but work hard and you can have the shirt. And he's taken advantage of McGregor getting an injury. I think what's good about this is that we did need to have some form of contingency planning, because McGregor's not going to play forever, and this could well be McGregor's last season as a number one at Rangers. And McLaughlin has shown himself to be very, very capable of stepping up and doing an excellent job. So what's good is that I know there was a little bit of discontent or maybe questioning when John McLaughlin signed, and I think he's silenced all of those critics by showing that he's incredibly capable, he's very competent, and he's not conceded a goal yet for Rangers. And considering the number of games he's played, that's an incredible achievement.
Iain, do you think it'll be quite difficult in McGregor's situation to be looking at perhaps one of his, as Ross says, one of his last seasons it could be, and there's a chance that he might not get back in because of the performances of McLaughlin? It would be interesting to know what was sort of going through his head, because McLaughlin was obviously in the media today saying that McGregor had helped him so much since he came up, become a better goalkeeper. It's going to be an interesting season for McGregor, because there's a chance, if these performances keep going, we keep clean sheets the way we are, that the opportunity to come back in might not arise.
Yeah, I mean, I think personally that McGregor will be the first choice, and I think he'll come back into the team and will be the number one for as long as things are going to plan. So I know, he's out at the moment. He's coming back from injury, so I can understand that, and maybe bringing him straight back in at the weekend would have been the wrong decision, especially as we're about to go into an extended break. But I do think his experience, his presence, his ability to pull off match-saving saves or match-winning saves will, unless things he suffers injuries or whatever, then I think he'll be the first choice. That's not to say that McLaughlin hasn't done a decent job, but he's not, as we say, he's not really had much to do so far in terms of saves. But you can only deal with what's put in front of you, and he's coped well, and he's looked confident. And you can the thing with goalkeepers is that it doesn't matter whether you're making saves or not. If you don't have the confidence of your defence or the rest of the team, then it shows pretty quickly, and suddenly mistakes happen, whether the other team are doing well or not. So there's never not been any sign of that at all. So he's looked confident. He's looked at a great backup. I still think McGregor will be the first choice. I think he's proven so many times that he's outstanding, and unless he's lost something in the recent weeks, which I don't think I imagine he has, then he would be my first choice, and I think he might be Steven Gerrard's as well.
How do you think Gerrard, just say with you here, Iain, how do you think Gerrard sort of approaches that subject? Because obviously, I don't know if there's been conversations had with McLaughlin or whatever when he signed, to say that he would be playing back up to McGregor, but having done so well, and as you say, he's not a great deal to do, but he has made a few good saves. His distribution has been good, arguably better than McGregor's. You know, do you think that there's already been an agreement there that McGregor would be number one?
I honestly don't know. I mean, I don't know if you'd be holding yourself as a you'd be leaving yourself a wee bit open there if you did do that and say that, because I suppose that would put you under pressure as the coach not to make decisions or to make certain decisions. So I don't suppose he could make that promise, but or make any sort of promise to either of them. I just think, I mean, it's a difficult. I always think it's a really difficult role, being a goalkeeper at a club that's got an existing successful goalkeeper, because you have to kind of hope that, well, to get into the team, you either have to hope they get injured or they have a few howlers, and most players don't really want that on either of those. So it's a difficult one for the players themselves, and it must be difficult for the coaches as well to keep them both happy. You can't really just rotate, game to game. You want the consistency. Consistency there. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can't imagine that he said, yeah, he's going to be the number one, and you're really only going to be sort of backup or standby. But at the same time, he's probably said, well, this is where we are just now, and it's up to you to make that position yours. But again, I mean, he's done nothing wrong, but equally McGregor's done nothing wrong either. He's just been out injured, so you would expect him to come back in.
Ross, in terms of that's a good selection headache to have, but I think there's most people would agree there's still maybe a couple of positions that are possibly an issue for us. Yesterday, Brandon Barker started second start in a row. I thought he played well against Kilmarnock last week, but I thought yesterday that his confidence just looked shot, within the first 20 minutes or so. I think it was clear to see in the second half with the chances that he missed, and just a lack of confidence on and off the ball. I felt that I'd be interested to see if Gerrard continues with him in a couple of weeks' time against Dundee United. But what did you make of, first of all, Barker's performance, and do you think that that position, that third position in the front line, behind a main striker, whether that's Roof, Iain or Morelos and Kent, that third position, it's still not really nailed down for someone, and we're not really sure when Hadji's going to play on a consistent basis. So what did you make of Barker, and do you think it's an issue in that position?
Well, Brandon Barker, generally, I won't pretend that I'm a big fan of him. I think that it's a slightly weird player for us in that he genuinely just doesn't really seem to have the quality that the other players have. You look around him and it's Ryan Kent or Yanis Hadji, Joe Aribo, Kamar Roof, Alfredo Morelos, some really, really quality players. And then Brandon Barker, he kind of just sticks out as not being quite naturally as good as the rest of them. But maybe that's unfair. Obviously, we keep getting reports that in training he's the best of the bunch and that he's setting Auchenhowie alight, but he just doesn't quite do it on match day. And obviously, last week he was good, but that's the first time in over a year that we've said that he was good. So I genuinely don't really know what he brings to the team. There certainly hasn't really been any end product so far. I mean, he contributed last week to one of the goals. The Ryan Kent goal kind of came about because of Brandon Barker taking the ball and driving at the defence, but that never really happened yesterday. And you're right, he almost seemed to get worse as the game went on, and I'm kind of hesitant to be overly critical of the guy, but he just doesn't seem to have the same quality as the other players around him, and it's slightly strange. So I think that there's possibly a vacancy or a spot there for someone else to come in and make that place in the team his own. Obviously, I think the team yesterday would have looked quite different had certain key players been available. Had Cedric Itten been fit, had Joe Aribo been fit enough to be risked on that plastic pitch. Would that mean that Barker would have dropped out? Maybe Hadji wouldn't have started. I don't know. But going forward, I mean, look, it's a long transfer window. Obviously, up until October, and there's plenty of time for comings and goings. And we know, following Gerrard's comments yesterday, that there will be more comings and goings, and that's great. Obviously, we've seen a couple more shipped out in the last couple of weeks. Brandon Barker, I don't see him surviving this transfer window, and maybe I'll be eating my words on that, and maybe he'll stay and he'll have an excellent season. But he's an attacking, creative player, and okay, he's not had a great deal of game time, but he's only scored 1 goal for Rangers, so he's really not setting the header light. And I think that whilst the team is playing well, Steven Gerrard is taking this opportunity to give Brandon Barker the best opportunity he can. Yesterday he did not take it, and he was certainly the weak link. Last week it was a good performance, he did well, but the team played well last week. So I don't know, it's a bit of a mystery. I know there's a lot of folks saying they don't understand why he's playing. I don't particularly understand it. But then I guess, we still have players like Jordan Jones on the books, Greg Stewart on the books, who again, they aren't really at that level of quality. And I think that this is a gap that the management team will be looking to plug with a bit more recruitment up until October.
Iain, just to stay on that point, and interestingly, Ross just said something I was going to mention there. We do have guys that, for all people think about, Jordan Jones and Greg Stewart and Brandon Barker, they're all of the same sort of ilk, but it doesn't seem like Stewart and Jones have had that opportunity that Barker's had in the past couple of weeks, and even, he's even been brought on this season sooner than some others. Do you think, is it a case that these guys aren't up to the required level, and we need to go and get more strength and depth, or do we start giving, maybe Stewart and Jones a bit of an opportunity, to do something in the team? Because obviously last season, Jones got injured quite early on in the season after getting sent off against Celtic. But before that, I think people maybe forget that he was the one that put in the great cross against Warsaw, made an impact in that game coming off the bench. Greg Stewart's shown, with Kilmarnock especially in Scotland and Dundee, that he's got a lot of quality, natural ability. Do you think that we'll see Gerrard give them more of an opportunity, or do you think that his mind is made up in many ways on those players?
I think a wee bit of silence. Was that meant to be still with me, David?
Sorry, I think we've. I don't know if Ian's about. Anyway, Ross, I'll come back to you on that. Just in terms of Greg Stewart and Jordan Jones, in terms of their abilities. What do you think? Do you think they can fill that space as well?
I think so. I appreciate I've just spent 3 or 4 minutes talking them down there, but I think that there's also an argument to be had that players like Greg Stewart, Brandon Barker, Jordan Jones, Glenn Middleton kicking around on the books. These players should be good enough to beat the majority of the dross in our league. You should be able to put Glenn Middleton and Jordan Jones on against teams like Hamilton and come away with a comfortable result. So I appreciate that if we have these guys on the bench, there is a significant gulf in quality between your starting 11 and your replacements on the bench. But they should be good enough to do a job against 70-80% of the sides in this league. And when it comes to your Celtic, your Hibs and your Aberdeen, maybe that's where it's a bit more questionable, a bit more marginal. But I think that there's still a role for them to play. But I think that at the same time, when you have Yanis Hadji and Ryan Kent either side and you stick Brandon Barker in the middle, one of those 3 sticks out like a sore thumb because he just doesn't have the quality of the other 2.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And in terms of, we've mentioned them, briefly tonight, but obviously Ryan Kent is of interest for Leeds United. Iain, there's rumours of a £15 million bid coming in this week. Whether that happens or not, we shall see. But when does it become too good to refuse? What sort of price are we looking at when we have to say, we can't turn it down?
Well, I think every player has his price, and you'd be naive, to say otherwise. But I think Ryan Kent this season is going to be a key player, and he started the season well. If he keeps that up, then he will be arguably our most important player this season, especially if Morelos does leave. So, as an individual player, then he's the one we're pinning all our hopes on. So I think every player has his price. I don't think we should be even entertaining anything under 20 million. Even if we got that for him, I don't know necessarily that we would get a player that we could bring in straight away that would have the same kind of impact that he's potentially going to have this season. Because the thing about Kent is that he's been on the books for a while now, and he's sort of gradually improved over the piece. Everyone could see the potential he's got, but I think this season, hopefully, he's sort of recognised it himself in some ways, and is taking it, grabbing it by the neck and just and going for it. And even if that's a couple of seasons it's taken for that to come, even if we bring in someone else, unless you pay really big money for proven quality, then you're always sort of running the risk that that player needs a settling in period. So we really don't need that this season. We really need players that are ready-made quality, and he is that, and we need that now more than we have done in the past. So I wouldn't really want him to go at all, but if I think we should be looking at big money for him. Apart from anything else, he's not long since he was on the books at Liverpool, and he's played elsewhere in England. He's proven in Europe for us. He's we paid whatever it was, 7 million for him not that long ago. So the English market is what it is, and you'd be 15 million doesn't sound to me like a realistic price for a guy with that kind of pedigree. So I would be definitely looking at minimum of 20 before we even open any discussions with Leeds or anyone else. But I'm hoping that he's not going to be going anywhere.
Can I just jump in on that as well, David? I think that a huge amount of that will rest on what happens with Morelos. I mean, if we get significant money for Morelos, then the appetite to turn down bids for Kent surely increases, and that kind of, at what point does it become too good to refuse? Well, if we get rid of Morelos, then that puts us in a very, very strong position to turn down much larger offers.
I think when you look at him though, in terms of Kent and what he offers the team, he's probably been our most important player, and he would probably, he'd be a massive loss. But you look at Morelos as well, and I think this is something that's maybe not been touched on a great deal in terms of the fact he has been such a talismanic figure for us over the past 3 years. Has scored a lot of goals, has been top goal scorer for the last 3 seasons, and now it feels like, and myself included, I think most fans have written him off in many ways and said, maybe we're better off without him. But Ross, in terms of Morelos and what he's given us and the goals that he's given us, and he's scored so many on such a consistent basis, and then if he leaves, Roof and Itton are still settling in. You saw that yesterday with Roof. He has got a lot of quality, but he's definitely still finding his feet a wee bit. Is there a worry that if we got rid of Morelos so hastily that would be left with a lack of that sort of proven goal scorer in the team, for us anyway, and certainly in the Scottish League?
Yeah, but potentially, I think that's a really valid point. We don't know what Kemar Roofe and Cedric Itton are going to do in terms of stats and output, but I think this is where it's more important that we start chipping in with goals from the creative midfield players. And we've seen that obviously pre-season and carrying into the season from Ryan Kent, from Joe Aribo. And I was very, very happy for that reason to see Yanis Hadji get a goal today. I keep saying today, get a goal yesterday. I think now we're in a better position than if we'd lost Morelos 12 months ago. We've got, obviously, we don't know, like I said, we don't know what Kamar Roof and Cedric Itten are going to do. And it's very unfortunate for Itten to get injured now, because it means that he's almost gone back to square one, 2 weeks off now, because of the international break. So that's a shame for him. But he was scoring goals in a very, very competitive Swiss league, in a team, St. Gallen, they came second in the Swiss league, and that was above, some very competent, established European football clubs in Switzerland. So I think the Swiss league is, I certainly don't think it's weaker than the Scottish league. So he's been knocking in goals over there, and that's a good sign. Kamar Roof, we know, has proven quality that got him the move from Leeds to Anderlecht. We've seen flashes of what he's going to bring, and we know that he's a few weeks behind the rest of the squad. So hopefully this international break comes at a very good time for him, and he can work on his fitness and his match sharpness. But what's more important is the fact that the creative midfielders are going to chip in with goals. I think we've seen it certainly yesterday. Ryan Kent has been given a directive to get the ball and get it to the goal, whether that's setting something up or having to go yourself. And Tavernier's goal yesterday came because of that, because he picked up the ball, he was positive, took on a man and put a shot on the goal. And Tavernier's there to mop up. I think given the creative midfielders, the wingers, and whoever it is that takes the Brandon Barker position, giving them the license to have a go, and giving them the encouragement to have a go and not over rely on Morelos, that gives me a little bit of confidence that if he does go, the rest of the players will realise that they need to replace those goals. And the early signs from this season, I think, are positive on that front.
Yeah, Iain, just to touch on Roof and his performance yesterday, he was another one that sort of seemed to get a lot more frustrated as the game went on, just with the chances he was missing. He had that great chance in the second half late on, the header just under the bar, which went over the top. But he seems to bring, and this was something that I touched on back when we were first linked with, he offers so much more than just goals. I think personally, in the way we play, he does open up the team in terms of, as Ross said there, bringing in the creative midfielders and bringing in the fullbacks through his movement and his ability to use the ball and use himself as a decoy for other players to be to gain more space on the pitch. Do you think that in terms of that signing, and if Roof is going to be the main focal point of the attack, that was maybe something that Gerrard looked at when he brought him in, because he does offer so much more than just goals.
Yeah, that the way we play, the way we set up, and that is key to it, isn't it? He has to be able to link with the midfielders and the other attackers. The thing about Morelos, just to go back to him, is I think we'd all agree that in an ideal world we'd want him to stay, but I think the fact that he's been written off is more to do with the fact that he doesn't want to be here, and the nature of or what appears to be the nature of his personality is that when he doesn't want to do something, then it's not quite down tools, but his attitude changes completely. So I think everyone really just wants the players that we've got to be playing to the best of their, giving everything in training and on the pitch. And I think there's a perception that Morelos isn't doing that, so we might as well get rid of him sooner rather than later and focus on the guys that we've got. And he offers an awful lot more than some people think. He's not just about banging goals in. He links up a lot, but we've talked in the past about how he comes back deep into midfield to pick up the ball and work. And that, I think, is quite an important element of what we'd be expecting from our front man. I don't know if Morelos leaves, whether we'll have a different approach or whether we'll stick with the same tactical approach, whether that was based around what Morelos offered or whether it's how Gerrard wants to approach the game, and he will make the players fit into his system. But I still think that we'll bring someone else in to play up front if Morelos does go, and another midfielder perhaps as well. So we're a wee bit, even with the two new signings, we're still a wee bit short, even with Defoe coming back, because I don't know how much he'll be able to contribute this season at the top level. So I still think we'll be looking at someone else coming in, and so you don't know who that's going to be. Is that going to be someone as a backup, or is that going to be our first choice striker? So I'm quite interested to see how that will turn around. But I think Roof is, he's a guy with proven quality, but he's new to the team. What I was saying earlier about new guys coming in, sometimes it takes them a while to settle. So you've got to hope that he settles quick. But I think the signs are good. But Eton I've actually been more impressed with than Roof so far. But maybe that's because they're further ahead in the. He's further ahead in the fitness stakes.
Ross, obviously, Defoe still to come back as well. Chat being from Gerrard through the week that it could be for the Dundee United game. Does he still have a role to play in the team?
Yeah, I think he has a very important role. I think he's proven himself very, very useful at coming on and grabbing goals off the bench. He's not going to play 90 minutes. I think I'll be amazed if he ever plays 90 minutes again in his career. I think he probably also has a very important role behind the scenes. I think he will do a lot for the younger lads in the team, a huge amount of experience. And I think that he's one of those characters that any manager would want to have in his dressing room. So, look, I don't expect to see his contract being extended once this is up. But I still think we'll see, possibly 5 to 10 goals from Jermaine Defoe this season. I think he's still one of the most naturally gifted footballers in Scotland. And I can imagine that he'll be a real mentor to a lot of the younger lads in the academy. So I'm certainly still very, very glad to have him on the books.
Yeah, one player we no longer have on the books as of yesterday is Jamie Murphy. He has gone to Hibs on a season-long loan. Iain, what do you think happened with Murphy? Because obviously he went out injured Gerrard's first season, and then it just never really happened for him under Gerrard. Do you think that he was? Do you think he was unlucky, or did he really have to move on? Because obviously we've seen, as we discussed, in depth a minute ago, Barker, Stewart and Jones remain at the club. Could Murphy have made an impact?
I don't know. I think he's one of these players whose face just didn't fit, and then for whatever reason, you don't know what goes on the training pitch and behind the scenes. So I just think Steven Gerrard didn't take a fancy to him basically as a player. So he just didn't have any long-term future at Rangers at all. So I think I'm never particularly keen on helping strengthen other teams in our league, especially the teams at that are ostensibly our competition. So I was a wee bit disappointed that he went to Hibs, same as I was a wee bit disappointed that McCrory went to Aberdeen. But you can't stand in these guys' way if they're entitled to get the best move they can. If that was the best move they could get, then they're entitled to go for that. But I just don't think that Murphy had a future at all. He was, probably if the three we were talking about, he would have been behind all of them in the pecking order, and I do think that they're, at least one of them and probably two of them might be going as well in the transfer window, or at least in the next transfer window. So he was way out of the chances of playing. So I think for whatever reason that's his time was up.
Yes, Ross, in terms of Gerrard, we've seen, as Iain mentioned there, Murphy is gone now, McCrory's gone, Lafferty's said in the past that he was quickly removed from the first team picture. Do you think that there's obviously quite a ruthless streak in Gerrard, and when he decides that a player isn't going to be part of his squad, he seems to make it quite a quick process to move them on. That is maybe something that we've not had for a few years in terms of a manager. And someone that can make decisions like that based on, the performance of players and where they fit into the particular system.
Yeah, I think it does come across as ruthless, particularly, there was a great deal of hope placed on players like McCrory and Greg Docherty, and I know that there's been quite a lot of regret and sadness at McCrory and Docherty being moved out. So it does in a way come across as a little bit ruthless from Gerrard, that once he's made his mind up about a player, that's it. And that's certainly kind of the rumour that comes from Okinawa, is that there's a number of players that Gerrard has just decided they'll never play for me again, and that was McCrory, Docherty, Murphy, Jordan Jones, allegedly, that desperate to ship out of the club. I suppose that actually what's changed for us this season is the incoming of Ross Wilson, who actually seems to have a knack of moving players on. And I don't think any of us are expecting that any of these players have been moved on for any vast sums of money. It's probably, a couple of £100,000 here and there. But that's something that we never really saw before. We would usually just see players running their contracts down and then leaving for nothing at the end of it. Think of the last couple of years we've had Andy Halliday and John Flanagan, amongst others, moving out in that kind of way. So I think actually I get the feeling that Gerrard, for his first season or two, and then going back further under Murty or Caixinha or Warburton, there probably was that desire to move out maybe some of the deadwood and some of the less high quality aspects of the squad, but just weren't able to do so, weren't able to find buyers or convince the players to terminate the contracts and move on. And I think actually that, look, like it or not, and I know there's been a lot of discussion about Docherty and McCrory in particular, and obviously a lot yesterday and today about Jamie Murphy as well. Like those decisions or not, they're certainly getting stuff done. They're certainly moving players out and making space in the squad, making space on the wage bill to try and bring more in. And it's the manager's prerogative. Obviously, McCrory and Docherty and Murphy were, a lot of fans were very, very fond of those players, and they certainly, I think Murphy and McCrory in particular had some real highlights playing for the first team. Remember the excitement when Ross McCrory burst into the first team? It was a very, very exciting time. So a lot of fans have a real fondness for those players. But look, it's Gerrard who sees these players day in, day out on the training pitch, and it's his prerogative. If they're not going to fit in his system, if they don't meet his expectations, then it's his right to move them on. And I actually think that Gerrard has kind of earned our backing in that regard, and I'm not happy to see homegrown youngsters move out the door when I thought they have promising careers, particularly see them move to clubs that could actually come back and damage us. I watched Aberdeen versus Hibernian today, and maybe I didn't watch it, maybe I suffered it, but McCrory was the best player on the pitch and got the man of the match award from Sky. So it's a shame to see him move to another club that could really harm us. But like it or not, Ross Wilson and Steven Gerrard are certainly effective at moving these boys out the door.
McCrory one's a strange one to me because I don't really think I don't think he's done anything certainly on the pitch that I've seen him done anything wrong. He's always looked confident. He's always looked competent. But then he went down in loan and got played out of position, or got played not in the position that we were expecting him to be played in when he was down in England. I think he ended up playing at right back when he was playing. So that would maybe suggest that even elsewhere that others didn't think that he had quite what was required to play in the positions, either at centre half or in sort of holding midfield, that people expected him to play at. So he ended up getting sort of shipped out to right back. Now maybe I'm wrong in that. There might be other reasons for that happening, but I wonder whether that's that he's simply not the player that we all hoped that he was. I mean, that might be as simple as that. But the Gerrard will make these decisions, and they'll have to live or die by them, because fans will look at maybe understandably thinking, well, how can that guy get shipped out and you keep this guy and play him, and he's terrible, and that's how the manager has to these decisions he has to make and face up to, and it's quite easy to point to situations like that regularly, and players always get better when they're not in the team, as they say. So it's a it's a difficult one to prove otherwise, but The McCrory one, I think is surprising, and I wouldn't be surprised if he does go up and have a good season in Aberdeen. But I suppose it's down to the manager to make these decisions, and he's got to live or die by them. But
well, moving on, the Europa League draw takes place tomorrow. We will be in that draw. Some of the teams that are in it with us are Progress again. Osijek, who we've also faced, Lincoln Red Imps of that beat Celtic a few years ago. Some others that we haven't faced. One-legged ties, Ross. So that takes out the normal format we'd be used to. Do you think that's an advantage or a disadvantage to us? The fact that it's not really on seedings in terms of who gets the home leg. It's just who luck of the draw, really. So it's going to be tough, and especially given that we only finished the previous competition about a month ago.
Yeah, to me, one-legged tie puts us at in a less strong position. I think I'd back us to beat any of those clubs over 2 legs, but 90 minutes of football, anything can happen, as they say, and that's been borne out in relatively recent history in Scottish football with ourselves in Progress, with Kilmarnock last year getting beat by the team from Wales, and obviously a few years back when Celtic lost over 90 minutes against Lincoln Red Imps. Anything can happen, as I say, in 90 minutes of football, and you'd prefer maybe the safety net of a second leg. The way that these draws work, as has been in the past, is that we get drawn into sort of a pre-draw group the night before, and it seems that's taken place this evening. So I've just had a message just while we're on air now saying that we've been put in a group with 3 other teams, that we will get one of the following 3 teams. We'll get Lincoln Red Imps, who we will be very, very familiar with, and hopefully that we'll be able to maybe show up our friends across the city by embarrassing them and putting a cricket score on Lincoln Red Imps. FC Servette from Geneva in Switzerland, which would probably be quite a tough draw, and a club that I'll struggle to pronounce, but FK Borac Banja Luka from Bosnia and Herzegovina. So again, if we're playing a single leg 90-minute tie in which we're having to trek over to deepest, darkest Bosnia, that's never going to be an easy tie. So look, it's exciting. It's hugely exciting to be getting started on another European campaign, especially one that's so soon after the ending of our last European campaign. I'm very much looking forward to getting started, and whether it's Lincoln Red Imps, Servette, or Borac Banja Luka, we should be able to progress quite comfortably against any of them. I note as well, actually, that Aberdeen are in a wee pre-draw group with Progress Niederkorn, so again, that could be another little interesting one to look out for. But as I say, David, I'd prefer it to be over 2 legs, but I'd also prefer for fans to be in the stadium and for everyone to be getting back to the normal. But obviously, that's not happening anytime soon.
Indeed, but the Europa League draw gives us something to look forward to, especially at international break. Just all that's left tonight is to thank both Ross and Iain for their company, and thank you for listening again. Please subscribe to the podcast and give us a like on social media. Even let us know your thoughts on what we're doing and what you'd like to see us do in the future. I think all that's left to say is good night. Thanks for joining us.